Well, hello, it's Robert. It's good to be back with you. It's been a little while since I've been with you. Been a lot going on in our house. My wife had rotator cuff surgery about a month ago, so she's been recuperating. And then my mom fell a few weeks ago. She's 85. She fell and broke her arm in three areas. And so just been a lot going on. Two women in my life with broken arms. And so it's been tough, but we're hanging tight. We're staying close. So anyway, wanted to take a few moments with you right now. Got James O'Gwyn. He's playing on the stereo right now. This was a nice German album from German release album on the Cattle label from back in the 80s of his old recordings. It's very nice listen. So you might hear a little bit of that in the background. But anyway, what I wanted to share with you today, I had talked a few weeks ago, or a month ago maybe, about the RCA Camden label and how valuable that label was for releasing a lot of the RCA artists' early material from their peak years on LP. It's in good sound quality, and it was the only way you could get those early recordings unless you went way back and got the original singles. Columbia was a Harmony label. Harmony was an excellent label. They were generally 10-song compilations, and they would take with a lot of the artists and released their original recordings, and that would be the only way you could get some of those songs released on that label. Good sound quality. It was most of the releases were in the early and mid 60s. We're going to share some examples of some nice albums that maybe sometime you can look for and add to your collection. I'm going to start out with Little Jimmy Dickens, who's a big Columbia artist in the 50s. This contains his 1949 recording of Pennies for Papa. Galvanized Washing Tub from 51 is there, along Walk Chicken Walk from 50, and a number of his other early 50s recordings. And then we have Lefty Frizzell. Nice album of country favorites. Features My Baby is Just Like Money is on here, Run 'Em All, Give Me More, 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 Sweet Lies, and others. That classic Lefty sound is on here. And then one artist whose early recordings never made it much to LP was Carl Butler. The great Carl Butler Sings. This contains most of his early and mid-50s recordings. Kisses Don't Lie, I'll Go Steppin' To, Borrowed Love, If I Could Spend My Heartaches. He had a nice singing style, very emotive filled style, and had a bit of that Roy Acuff influence in his singing. Then we have a very nice one of Ray Price. This contains mostly early and mid-50s recordings. His first sizable hit of Talk to Your Heart is on here. His version of Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes, Sweet Little Miss Blue Eyes, That's What I Get for Loving You, and a number of those other earlier Ray Price classics, right before Crazy Arms, and then that string of hits he had there. And then Johnny Bond, who was popular in the 40s and 50s, so there was a couple Harmony releases on him. This is one of them, Johnny Bond's Best, with Cimarron and Barrel House Bessie, Put Me to Bed, 10 Little Bottles, and others. And speaking of Lefty, another one where he sings the songs of Jimmy Rogers, very early recordings from 51. Brakeman's Blues, Blue Yodel number 6, My Rough and Rowdy Ways. He went back in 53 and did 4 more songs of Jimmy Rogers, California Blues, and Sleep Baby Sleep from that session is on here as well. The Stanley Brothers are so well known through the years, and their early Columbia recordings always stayed with them. They had a certain style and sound to them. It's Never Too Late is on here. The Fields Have Turned Brown, their 1951 version of I'm a Man of Constant Sorrow. The Wandering Boy from 52, that's Carter singing solo entirely on that. So it's very nice. Early Stanley Brothers and Clinch Mountain Boys. There is another release on Harmony of them as well. And then we have one of Gene Autry, recordings from 38, 39, 40, and 41. Things like Blueberry Hill, Tweedledee Twill, When It's Springtime in the Rockies, Twilight on the Trail, and others. Very nice early Gene Autry. I love the cover on that as well. And then George Morgan, who was very popular in the early 50s, late 40s. The flip side of Candy Kisses, a big hit of his in 49, was Please Don't Let Me Love You. Classic. That's on here, as well as Whistle My Love, Room Full of Roses, Most of All, and some others. But it's an early George Morgan sound. Then we got early Harmony release of Bob Wills. There was 3 Harmony releases of him. This was the first one with San Antonio Rose, New San Antonio Rose, Big Beaver, Trouble in Mind, And some of the very first Harmony releases were released on the Red Label, and this happens to be one of them. And one of the more popular Harmony releases, you'll see this a lot in one form or another, is Roy Acuff, Great Speckled Bird. This features his early 40s Columbia classics, Wreck on the Highway, Fireball Mail, Low and Lonely, Freight Train Blues, and Wabash Cannonball, and this is like just some of the highlights, some of the best of Roy Acuff from that era. And speaking about Roy Acuff, was another good Harmony release of the great Roy Acuff. These recordings are from 40 and 41. Lonesome Old River Blues, Be Honest With Me, You're My Darling, his version of Mule Skinner Blues, and others. This, again, is classic Roy and the Smoky Mountain Boys sound. Then we have Stonewall Jackson, very popular in the late 50s and early mid-60s. This has his first version of Don't Be Angry. He recorded in 63 and became a big hit at that time, but the original from 57 is on here, along with Misery Known as Heartache, A Broken Heart, A Wedding Band, Wedding Bells for You and Him, but it's the early classic good country style of Stonewall Jackson. Now going into Flatt and Scruggs, this was one of the last Harmony releases with Songs to Cherish. Featured Mama and Daddy's Little Girl, Big Black Train, Crying My Heart Out Over You. All these are from the late 50s. This album, I believe, was released in 68. It is one of the very last on Harmony to also have a mono number. 99 times out of 100, when you see this album be rechanneled for stereo, this is the first run of being in mono. And then we have one of my favorite country singers from the 40s, Molly O'Day and the Cumberland Mountain Folks. There was obviously a Roy Acuff influence. She had a real mountain style sound to her. And a lot of recordings she did were religious at the time. These are more secular ones. I Don't Care If Tomorrow Never Comes, Put My Rubber Doll Away, The Drunken Driver, Singing Waterfall. Had a really good sound to her, and she retired from making records way too soon. And in fact, serving stints in her band in her early years was Mac Wiseman and Carl Smith. Both had played the bass for her on some of her very early recordings. And then we got the Carter family. They recorded for Columbia people in 35 and 41. And these are all 35 recordings of their versions of Wildwood Flower, Worried Man Blues, Little Darling Pal of Mine, Gathering Flowers from the Hillside, Can the Circle Be Unbroken? Again, this was seemed to be a very widely known album when it came out. Really helped to introduce a lot of people to the Carter family sound, along with an RCA Camden album that had come out like a year or two earlier. And then another one a little bit later, Carter family release, was My Home Among the Hills. Sad and Lonesome Day was on it. We Shall Rise, My Old Virginia Home, My Home Among the Hills, and others were on this. And then we have Don Gibson. Don Gibson was very big on RCA Records in the late 50s. He recorded briefly for MGM before that, and in the early 50s, he recorded for Columbia from around 52 and 3. This has No Shoulder to Cry On, Walking in the Moonlight, Sample Kisses, and some others from that era. It's good to hear a solid honky-tonk sound from Don Gibson, a fiddle and steel. Interesting side note is on a few of the recordings that the fiddle player was Kenny Baker, who was known years later for playing with Bill Monroe. Another one of the Flatt and Scruggs was Great Original Recordings, which this was early 50s material. Over the Hills of the Poorhouse, Dear Old Dixie, I'm Gonna Settle Down. This is volume 1. There really never was a volume 2, but classic album. And then we have a Norma Jean. This is stereo. These were recorded in stereo largely. She was noted for being with the Porter Wagoner Show in the 60s. Had the big hit Let's Go All the Way and a number of other hits after that. Her recording career basically started with Columbia. Around 59 and 60 is when these are from. Good hard country sound. Don Helms appears on the steel on some of these. But recordings of I Didn't Mean It and Why Don't You Love Me, What Does a Poor Girl Do, You Called Me Another Woman's Name, and others. Fine listen. And then another one of late 50s material was some of the first recordings of Mel Tillis. He started out with Columbia. It Takes a Worried Man to Sing Worried Blues is on here. That was from 57. That was his first release. Also Jukebox Man. The classic 58 version of Violet and a Rose is on here. So very nice early Mel Tillis. Some of his stuff on Columbia was hard country, and others he was trying for a pop style. So It's like Columbia didn't know what to do with him, but when he hit into solid country, the recordings were excellent that he made. Some of the best I thought he made was in his early Columbia years. And then one of my favorites Columbia artists from the 50s was Carl Smith. There was a couple harmony releases of him. You couldn't get the early recordings of his on hardly any of the other albums at the time, but you got the originals here. Me and My Broken Heart, Little Girl in My Hometown, Just Wait Till I Get You Alone, That's the Kind of Love I'm Looking For, Go Boy Go, and others. Last but not least, there was 3 harmony releases of Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys. They recorded for Columbia in 45 to 49, and this has some of those that had Flattened Scruggs with them, of Heavy Traffic Ahead. Sweetheart, You Done Me Wrong, Toy Heart is on this, as well as the 1945 sessions of Bluegrass Special and Goodbye Old Pal. They had String Bean, he had it with them on those recordings. So a very fine release of Bill Monroe. As I mentioned, this is one of 3 harmony releases. Obviously, there's other harmony releases I don't have, but I didn't show rather, but don't pass them up. There is a world of good country music. The liner notes are brief, it's true, but when you listen to it, it's good stuff, good sound quality, and you can really add that to your collection and flesh out older country LPs. So enjoyed sharing that with you, and appreciated the time that you've listened and paid attention. So thank you for that. Thank you for watching. As I said, a lot going on in our family. We're hanging on tight, hold on to each other. So hold on to your families as well tight. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and hope to see you very soon. Thanks again for watching. So long for now.